So you're someone who goes to a ton of Pokemon TCG tournaments and you haven't really found the success you're looking for, whether it be a local level event like a league challenge or a league cup, or you're traveling across a couple of states, maybe countries, to a regional championship, or even preparing for an international championship. Preparation is different for every single human being, and everyone approaches it very differently. But there are some tips and tricks you can do to make sure you optimize your performance as you play at the highest level. My name is Rahul Reddy, and been playing competitive Pokemon for almost 15 years now and have competed in multiple world championships, even getting ninth place. So every single person has their own way of figuring out how they're good at certain things, and what they're not good at. And preparation is one thing that I think the better your preparation is, the better your tournament experience will be. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of tips and tricks about how I learned through a lot of trial and error. It's like the same as studying when you're in school. Like not every single person studies the same way, but there's a lot of prep you can do. Now, the biggest thing is in today's day and age, there is infinite information out there compared to what there used to be. There is free posts on social media with explanations on deck lists. There's content on YouTube, Twitch, wherever you look. There's a ton of very good competitive content wherever you want to go for completely free. Now, if you want to take it one step above that and try to learn from people who have already put the time in, there are players who put out these master classes or guides. And I caution you guys before you purchase one of these. To make sure the player has actually had a good accomplishment. And I think something like a top eight, or there's someone who is good and in the past has been very articulate about explaining things. Because sometimes the best teachers don't have to be the best players; they could just have a good idea of how concepts are supposed to work. That being said, those are probably your best bang for your buck because those players who update them frequently, like myself, my Terra Box guide and Lugia guide, I updated pretty frequently, almost weekly, if I could, depending on how fast the meta adapted with new deck lists, new profiles, new adaptations, and for something like $25, you're basically getting all of this information on a weekly basis until the deck is done. Like you don't have to usually pay any more for these things. And if you're in someone's class like Tord or Isaiah Bradner, they have updating deck lists. You have a community to talk in. You can ask all these questions. It's basically like paying for coaching, but a little bit less. And that brings me to my next point. If you always think you're a player that is struggling and don't know exactly where your goals are, or you need to figure out like your small things, it's a pretty good chance you're messing up your sequencing in some capacity. So that's where coaching kind of comes in. Now that's just kind of like ways to, I think, jump in and cheat the system a little bit. But let's take a couple steps back. When you're going to a regional championship or even a local or whatever, you got to pick your deck. So that comes down to the art of deck building or picking a deck in general. 90% of the time, you can just copy paste a deck from Limitless, make a couple tweaks that you think are good, and just go in. But the biggest thing in those situations is knowing what your 60 cards are all meant to do. And what I mean by that is like you can copy Henry Chow's winning Gardevoir deck, you can copy Tor Reklev's winning international deck, but if you don't know exactly what those 60 cards are meant to do in every given situation, you're basically just not using the deck to the full potential. That's where kind of looking at content or some of this paid stuff will help out because you learn how to use those cards pretty well. And if you're someone who hops from deck to deck pretty frequently, sure, at the local level, that's like completely fine because there's not a lot of stakes going on. You're going to your cups, your challenges. You're maybe just playing locals on a weekly basis. But sticking to one deck is really good because it lets you learn the intricacies yourself and kind of figure out like those small lines. Um, that being said, if you find a deck that you like, I said stick to it. If you don't like the deck, keep switching around, figuring it out. And what's the best way to figure it out? Is it going to locals every week? Is it doing all that stuff? Not really. That's kind of time consuming. By the time you go to locals and have your cards and like your deck sleeved up, you probably want to have a pretty decent experience. Even your challenges cups, you're probably spending some amount of money to be there and compete. So you can just go to Pokemon TCG Live. Now, it's not the greatest application or the greatest client that exists out there, but Pokemon TCG Live is decent practice. You're basically just queuing up on this random ladder. It doesn't matter whether you're at Pikachu tier, whether you're at like for Alligator tier, or whether you're up in Arceus tier, you're going to be getting some practice and you're going to learn how certain matchups work. And the most important thing is you're going to learn how your own deck works. And a lot of the time, those learning experiences are going to come from making mistakes. So as you're making mistakes during your prep, you're going to be like, oh, wait, like I just realized I could do this better or I could do that better. And that's kind of where your individual prep comes in, where you have to learn how those like certain interactions and sequencing and even like how the game should play out. Now, obviously, every game is not going to play out as such. If it did, then we would just be playing chess, and card games are not nearly as fun as, or sorry, chess is not nearly as fun as card games. But that's kind of how you learn how sequencing and like what should play out. Like, oh, I hit my sixth Joltik box deck of the day on ladder. and this is how every time it went, or this is like why I was losing. Let me try something new. I get a chance to try something new, or they were playing this card in their list that made it very difficult for me to play the game. And from there, you can figure out the shortcomings with your deck and how you're approaching each individual matchup. That's kind of the prep that a lot of top level players do. I think a lot of players at the top of the leaderboards, a lot of the players that you see constantly finding themselves in top cuts of regional championships, international championships, world championships are always playing live. They're always figuring out these lines. Um, and then on top of that, there are groups. You when you're practicing, you want to practice with purpose. So when you go to like a local or even you're playing on live, you can sometimes just mindlessly ladder, whatever. We all do that from time to time while watching a TV show. But there's always practicing with purpose. And what I mean by that is like you're going in being like, okay, I'm going to try out my Terror Box deck today. Let's see how this works. Like, what happens if I put this card in? How do I go from here? That's where kind of having friends or like making friends with your local scene helps out a ton. Um, I know it's daunting, it's scary to try to make friends, but if you're at your local scene, if you're already going to these cups and challenges, just have some friendly conversation. Talk to the guy across the table from you. Talk to the person across the table from you. Maybe they want to talk, maybe they don't. Kind of read the vibe. You make a friend. You can make someone that you go back to the next league cup, next league challenge. You run into them. What's up? How's it going? Long time no see. Just quick conversation that can build into a budding friendship. And for me, I have friends that I've transcended the game. I'm in someone's groomsmen party that I met in Pokemon in 2013, and that is something that's like beautiful. Whatever. Anyway, that's not really gonna help you win regionals. But having friends will help you win regionals. Will help you do better big events. Having friends to brainstorm off of ideas prevents you from jumping into these like little like rabbit holes, like tunneling into these ideas. And sometimes they'll break you out of them. And sure, like if you have like three or four people, there's a chance that you guys could just be going down the wrong rabbit hole in general. But it like some people will bring you out of like your delusions and your like coping sometimes, and that's like really helpful sometimes because like I could be sitting there and I'm like, I really want to make this deck work, man. I really want to make this deck work, and they could just be like, what are you doing? Like you've lost like Gardevoir 17 times in a row, and you keep like saying like if I had this one card, if I did this one thing, and they could save you some time waste, and also the individual friends are really good to play individual matchups against, so you're not sitting on ladder hunting for that certain matchup where now you've hit your seventh Garganackle Frostlass deck, and you're like, man, I just really want to hit a real meta deck at some point on the ladder. When you're going to the tournament, mental focus is one of the biggest things, and prep for regional. So once you've locked in a deck, I think if you're going to a regional championship, try to lock in a deck about 2 weeks ahead of time, and use those 2 weeks to just fully hammer it in. Like a month, 3 weeks out, you still have time to flip flop around, figure things out. But 2 weeks out, I think you should be able to like lock a deck in, be very comfortable with one or two choices, and try to narrow down your 60 at this point, and just become as comfortable as you can in those 2 weeks with the deck. Because 2 weeks is plenty of time, regardless of what you've got going on in your life, to practice, figure things out. And by the time you get there on the regional on Friday, you're gonna be stressed out. And like, let me tell you guys, like on Friday or on the Saturday of a tournament, when you're competing, it's there's gonna be added factors like stress. You're not gonna be, it's not gonna be the same tabletop scenario you're used to. So you want to have basically your ways of dealing with your pressure. Like for me, I love going outside, getting some air. I always wash my hands in between rounds, and I like to listen to music. So you got to find your own beat. You got to figure out how you eat food, deal with stuff at a tournament. Energy drinks, coffee. Maybe you need to have your coffee every morning. Try to keep your routine as similar as you can. Make sure you've got water, snacks, all that good stuff when you get to the tournament, because your pre-tournament prep is what's going to lead you in those later rounds, especially when you're in stressful situations. The more you practice, the more situations you see, the better you'll be. Now, um, you basically can analyze the metagame and like look at current top decks when you're looking at stuff by using tons of resources like Limitless TCG. Labs.limitless also popped up, so you can see exact percentages. You can look at how players are adapting to each individual tournament, looking at top results from each individual tournament. And like I said, you can basically just copy and paste winning decks, and you probably will have some success with it in some capacity. Now, it's not going to work all the time like that, but you have so much wealth of deck and matchup and all this information is so readily available to you. It's just how are you going to use this and apply this to your own testing, basically. Like I'm gonna look sometimes and be like, wow, Raging Bolt is favored in all these decks. So why am I not just playing Raging Bolt? Because I know that at the top of the tables, the best players know how to play against Raging Bolt. Sure, Raging Bolt can beat some of the like the worst players that exist, but at the end of the day, some of these top players are gonna know exactly what to do into Raging Bolt. Their decks are not built to lose to these Raging Bolt decks. So do you want to win the tournament? Do you want to make day two? Do you want to earn some championship points? Do you want to get some cash? What is your goal? And based on that, you can figure out what kind of player and what kind of deck you want to play with. Sure, maybe you're not as experienced with Dragapult and you know that you're not the Andrew Hedrick of the world. So you might want to play something else like Raging Bolt. And that's completely commendable and okay. Like I personally didn't play Regidrago V-Star because I was not confident with the deck. I chose to play an inferior deck and Lugia V-Star, and I still found myself my own success with it. So this is all like a long-winded point to say like everyone's prep is completely different. Um, there's a bountiful wealth of data out there. There's no shortcut for hard work. So please play your PTCG lives. Please play your matchups against your friends, and kind of narrow down your deck about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. Don't be afraid to get coaching. There's nothing embarrassing in getting coaching. Don't be afraid to buy those guides and ask the right questions. Go to those master classes, do those things. This is not an ad for any of those. Like I only have done 2 guides in my lifetime. But personally, if I didn't have the friends in the testing group that I did, I'm basically just getting free coaching from them. Like I'm asking the same questions you guys are probably asking, except I get to do it for free because I'm also technically a top player. But that's what where your friends and your friend group come in too because they can figure out something as well. But if I can go to like Tord and be like, Tord, I'll give you 25, $40, whatever, to like explain all these matchups to me, I would do that. You know, like if I don't know what's going on, maybe I'm going to buy his guide and figure it out. And I'm no better than you guys sometimes. Like I have to learn as quickly as possible. And why not just go to someone who's already put the time in? So just make sure you're mentally prepared before you get to the tournament. Hopefully this helped out a little bit. Let me know if there's any like tips or tricks you guys have, and you guys can leave them in the comments. I've never done really a video like this before, where I'm just kind of like explaining not my process, but just kind of like what a good process looks like. So hopefully this is something you guys enjoyed. And if you guys want to see more videos of me like talking about pertinent TCG topics about being a top player and how to get to that level, please let me know, and I will make sure I oblige. Thank you guys, and peace out.